Me?
Yes. And your cool background also.
Oh,
I can see
okay.
both.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to do a quick check and make sure we have all of our student reps and board members on here before we get started.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. There we go. I see Devlin's here. Okay, so I'm calling our Hillsboro School Board meeting work session. And our first item on our agenda is our budget update with Michelle Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. I believe we have a presentation I need to be sharing. If we could, I didn't see who is on support. Karina, thank you so much. It's that time of year, everyone. So I just want to thank you in advance for letting me talk a little bit about the budget tonight. I know that there's been an awful lot of other big business topics, and I just appreciate your time tonight. We did invite the budget committee. This is the first of multiple work sessions that we'll have that are part of our normal budget development cycle. So just a reminder, I see almost everybody, I think, but I'd just like to go down a quick list of our current budget committee members. We have Don Wallace. If you could give a wave, newly appointed. Thank you, Don, for joining us. We have Michael Smith, recently reappointed to the budget committee. We have Nina Carlson, who has spent many years with us throughout this budget process. Kim Strelchin, our infamous prior board member. Kim, thank you for making time to be here tonight. Monica Uribe, thank you for joining. Kevin Murphy, also on the budget committee. And then we most recently received a notice from Kyle Taylor, who was in position 4, that he needed to withdraw from his appointment due to relocation. And last week out in the board update, we are making a recommendation to appoint the next runner-up from our recent appointment process. And so we'll be doing that at the upcoming regular session. So something to watch for there. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Karina, if we could advance the slide. All right, so here I always like to do an agenda. Just so in case you need to take some long blinks, you'll know where to do them. We have, we're going to talk about our budget development process. So this is going to be really old information for almost everyone, but it's a good idea to refresh it this time of year as we begin to start our cycle for the upcoming school year. We're going to take a quick peek at the budget development calendar that we've put together, and we're going to again approve that at the upcoming regular session at the end of the month. We have our budget assumptions. They're pretty high level at this point, but I wanted to share with you guys what we typically do when we're trying to estimate the revenue and expenditures that we're going to have moving forward. A quick peek at our outlook for the current service level. And that's really focused on our general fund operating budget. It's doesn't include all funds, but it's a very important topic, especially as we're moving into full legislative session, or we're in the middle of it right now. And then other hot topics include the Student Success Act and its ties to our continuous improvement plan. That sounds a little bit dull after everything we've been through this year, but it's really what we are anchored back to as we look ahead and start planning. So that would include our Student Investment Act, full funding of Measure 98, which is the high school success program, and then some other resources that we should expect to see. So with that, Karina, thank you. Our process, we talk about the local budget law and the requirements of the law. The minimum is that the board has an equally appointed number of community representatives to go through this process, to receive the budget message, review the proposed budget, and work with staff to get it to a point of approval where it will move then towards our budget adoption, which usually occurs in June. And then we are able to implement the budget beginning July 1st for the next school year. So, back up, I'm not done. Oh. So that was, I just want to talk a little bit more about the budget work and communications, because in Hillsboro, we go way above and beyond what the minimum requirements are of the law when it comes to our budget committee, because we rely on you to be sense makers in the community and key communicators about what's going on and to ask those important questions. So you guys are key communicators for us, and that's why the process in Hillsboro is much more rigorous than in other districts across the state. I just wanted to brag about that a little bit because it's unique and very special to us. So, okay, Karina, I'm ready. So we have our budget development calendar. Again, I'm gonna ask you to approve this at our upcoming regular session. And this is the first of 3 work sessions that we will spend talking about our budget outlook as more information becomes available to us. We have estimates that kind of firm up into actuals in some ways. Our budget is always a guideline moving forward, and so we want to make sure that we have the most current information we have to make our decisions and set our spending levels for the next year. Our budget committee meeting is on April 27th. It's kind of wedged between a work session and a regular meeting. We do have room on the calendar, kind of save the date for May 6th in case we need additional budget committee meetings for discussion. Usually by the budget committee meeting on April 27th, you guys have heard any of the major changes that we're anticipating for the year, and not likely any surprises. But if for some reason we need to elongate the process, we've got that save the date on the calendar. And then our budget hearing, it's like an official act that happens during the June 22nd meeting, and we can move forward into the new year. So that's our calendar. We can go ahead, Karina, thank you. All right, so this again is really focused on our operating budget, our general fund, and these are the revenue assumptions that we've used in the past and will continue to move forward. Thankfully, some of this information looks pretty standard. We have our local revenue property taxes. They generally increase about 4%, a little above, a little bit low, with the 95% collection rate. And so that's what we anticipate when we give our estimates to the state, along with every other district, in terms of informing what the state school fund grant will be. We have our state school fund, which is really driven by student enrollment and student demographics. So it's important to note here that we're counting on enrollment to return to pre-COVID levels. So really that second quarter of 1920, that's what we're kind of anchoring our estimates for enrollment back to, with an increase for year over year, not an increase, but they move up through the grades at that. We're paced to that, but using 1920 second quarter data as a starting point. The governor's budget came out with a 9.1 for state school fund, which is flat from the current biennium. So that presents a challenge to us. Her budget is on a 50-50 split, but in Hillsboro, we typically look at balancing our budget for the biennium. We try to take that bigger view, and we'll create an internal 49-51 split if necessary, if that doesn't change. But there's a lot of conversations happening at the state level right now to kind of make that 49-51 so that there's additional resources in the second year for roll-up costs. And then we have in our kind of our long-term projection slide, we have are anticipating 5% annual increase to the state school fund, which is actually a fairly accurate historical trend as we look in the rearview mirror. So we're counting on that once we move beyond the current biennium. Our teacher experience, which does influence our state school fund and the level we're funded at, we get a little bit more if we have more experience than the state average and a little less if we have less. We're just really close to them, so it's getting flat. We're closing the gap on our teacher experience rate. We do charge an indirect rate to our major grants of 4%. We don't exceed that even if our calculations allow us to, but that helps us kind of pay back our general fund operating budget for the overheads associated with major grants like Title I and IDEA and nutrition services. So that's typically something that we will also apply to the state level grants such as Student Investment Act and Measure 98. Our other sources throughout the budget are going to be based on historical experience and then some actual allocations if those are available. It's been a little bit challenging to get actual allocations from anybody at the state level, but if we have them, we will use them. And if we don't have them, we will use our best estimates at the time. Are there any questions about the revenue assumptions? Okay. Wow, that was a big slide for me. So I know this is a ton of information too. So of course, I'm happy to answer questions at the end. And then also, as you have time to digest some of this information, you're always welcome to send me an email for details. Our expenditures assumptions that come to you in the proposed budget and throughout the budget meetings and Mike's message will include staffing adjustments from year to year. That is something that we would typically include. Our salary and benefits levels, they're undetermined right now. We're looking at some projections just in development right now. I'll just leave it there. Our services, we're anticipating a 7% annual increase in utilities, fuel, subs, and other service agreements for each year. And for services, we're using 18-19 as the base year because that was our last full year of operations. So we take that 7% for the next year and the next year, and that rolls up year after year. Services include utilities for the additional square footage that we've added, internet access for one-to-one, and just the increased costs associated with our other contracts. For supplies, we estimate a 4% annual increase with, again, 2018-19 is our base year because that was our last full year of supply use. And really at this point, it still feels a little bit early in our planning and discussions, but pandemic-related recovery-related expenses, we're targeting any federal funds that we get towards those, whether it's operations, logistics, or student needs. So you're going to hear more about that as we get closer to returning next year. All right, thanks, Karina. Read my mind that time. This is a picture of our long-range forecast. We look at something pretty similar almost every budget cycle where you can see that the current year is balanced. That's 2021. We're estimating that we've had some operational savings through comprehensive distance learning period, but we've also experienced a lot of additional costs. And as we move back into in-person instruction, anticipate higher than average operational costs at that time. So between the early savings and the additional costs and just different things that we've had to do for business, we're anticipating that we will end on a balanced budget for the school year. So that's actually very good news. Now for the 21-22 and 22-23 years, both of those are in that biennial period. You can see that there's quite a difference between what we're expecting in terms of revenue and expenditures. And that's the gap in the state school fund being funded at the same level as we were last biennium or the current biennium, with our costs increasing. Again, we're anticipating that our service level is at that pre-COVID level. So that's the mark that we're using to determine what our expenditures are going to be in terms of service. So that is why there is a gap there. Let me see, I have a few notes. There is a need at the state level for advocacy. I know that we have some very passionate board members that are vocal in Salem. I work with folks too. In terms of the 9.1 funding level, there's already a portion of the Student Investment Act dollars, just slightly less than what we actually received this year, are using to shore up our current service level budget for this current year. So we had $4.6 million of current year service level that have been charged to Student Investment Act. And is with the projections that we currently have for Student Investment Act, they will just about close that gap in additional service level, but that would leave us nothing left for investment. So I just be clear about that with you guys, because I know that you are having conversations on a regular basis. And once our state school fund is reduced, it's going to have very long-term implications. You can see that ongoing gap for our service level in the future.
Michelle?
Yes.
I did have a question because you were talking about using the 2018-19 as the base, but to kind of help do the projections. And I'm wondering, a lot of the things that we're, advocating for, especially why we need more dollars, is because there's an added cost to coming back after COVID, with all the safety and health requirements that we need to. So even with that base number being what we're going off of, is there an additional amount? Is there an additional amount that is being built into that calculation for all those extra things that we're going to have to do?
Well, thank you for asking, Erica. That is really what we're going to be targeting, any additional federal dollars that we see. So we're trying to keep our eye as operations that are standardized for services versus those added costs that we have that are most likely temporary, because those funding sources from the federal government and other aid, that's temporary. So as we navigate this, we are anticipating some additional costs. Some of it will be operational, but other will be more targeted. And really, we need to have everybody back so we can see and feel and understand what those costs are. So when back on our expenditure slides, when I was referring to 2018-19, I was really focusing that just on our services and our supplies, because those are the things that we haven't experienced for a full year since then. And oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Lost my place.
It's okay. Most of us either have a dog or kids, so I mean.
Well, she's usually just quite sleepy, so I'm not sure what's going on. But yeah, the 18-19 was the full year of services and supplies. Everything else we're trying to monitor and adjust as we're moving through our different versions of service. We've had additional costs in areas that we didn't budget for this year, but we've also had savings in other areas. And so we're just trying to monitor those very closely. And that will shift again as we move into pre-K2 hybrid, and then as that expands and as that expands. So we're trying to build in some flexibility in our planning for sure. I don't see any hands up or anything. Mike, you got to help me out if you need me to stop talking. Otherwise, I'll charge ahead. Karina, you can go ahead and advance the slide. So this is this is Michelle speculating. I had it on a napkin and then I decided to type it up and share it with you guys. But we do have some flexibilities in the operational side of the equation. But what that means is giving up some investments, whether it's full funding of high school success. Is that going to backfill some shortfall to the state school fund or Student Investment Act again? That doesn't ease our requirements of reporting, but what that allows us to do is to not reduce services that we would have had we rolled forward from 2019-20. There are also, we could reduce more out of the budget and repurpose as needed, but that's never really a popular conversation or choice, as we've been in a reduction mode for years and years and years. And there is a potential that as we move through our hybrid model, that if costs are less than what we need, that there may be an overage in our fund balance, but that really won't be available to us until after the school year has begun. So that will be, again, more targeted towards student recovery. And the other piece to this is we're not really sure how many students are going to show up and where in our systems. And so again, just making sure that we're flexible and able to meet those needs. Yes, Mark.
The funds wouldn't be available till next year once everything's finished. But when will we have a pretty good idea of what to expect with the ending fund balance?
Probably mid-August. There's a lot of a $240 million budget that has to shake out before I can present a number. But last year I was able to do that in kind of an unofficial cash flow report to the board that kind of showed where I anticipated that we would land, and thankfully our audit confirmed that. So
The other thing that timeline would do would be to give us a greater understanding of where we need to accelerate learning for students and groups of students, and better understand what that cost might be. So while this is the first of many presentations that you'll hear on the budget as we move into full legislative activity, we'll continue to get greater clarity as each month goes. We'll have a better understanding of what the budget is going to actually shake up to look like, as well as what some of those additional costs are going to be for us.
thank you, Mike. Karina, you want to go ahead and move us forward? These are some other just broader budget considerations that we tend to think about and we'll touch on as we move forward. Our extended federal program outlook, if there's any increase in appropriation or decrease in appropriation at the federal level, and if that shakes all the way down through the state to us, that could impact us in terms of IDEIA or Title I also is another avenue which they have pushed money through in the past. Nutrition services, our program right now, we have done some phenomenal work and kind of over and above what a lot of districts have done in terms of delivering meals to families throughout the district. And with that, it comes a cost. And what that looks like as we move through hybrid and then as we return in the school year. The nutrition services program has always been a special revenue fund that has been able to sustain itself and not rely on support from the general fund or any other sources. And last year, this year, and potentially next year, it may need some additional support. Economic stability, we've only had, believe it or not, just a few forecasts with experience during the pandemic. And so our next forecast, revenue forecast for the state, is February 23rd. And that's going to have a pretty big bearing on what our legislatures decide to do in terms of funding for K-12. Student enrollment impacts, not just for Hillsboro, but across the state. So Oregon as a state has fewer students, which changes the amount per student that is distributed. But as other districts are trying to project what their enrollment is going to be for next year, that could produce some pretty significant swings in the estimates that we see released from the department in terms of state school fund. And then just what ours actually is, what it actually performs at. Right now we know that we're down, 1,000 students from last year, and that is eventually going to catch up with us. So with the bargaining outcomes, we are moving into bargain with both of our union partners, classified and licensed. So the outcomes of the bargain typically will impact our expenditure levels, our recovery period efforts. How long as a district do we identify as a recovery period for students? Is it 6 months? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? And how do we adjust our resources to spread out and meet those needs and to get beyond this pandemic recovery period? Another factor is technology needs. And I know that Jordan is going to bring forward more information as we move through our budget cycle about our shift to the one-to-one hardware, the curriculum that we need supported, student access and staff support, ongoing professional development. So COVID has presented to us some unique opportunities to move forward with technology and instruction, and that is going to require some support moving ahead. So just another thing to consider. Oh, Mark, you had to ask. I'm gonna ask Adam to punt on that one. Adam, can you help me out with the kindergarten count?
Just rough guess. I remember we've talked about it before.
I'll tell you what, give me 2 minutes and I'll jump back in.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for him, I think the next slide is our questions slide. So are there any other questions besides that one?
I just had a question on, like you mentioned how nutrition services normally is a program that can stand on its own, but now its own funding. And we see a forecast of having to have additional support. Is that something that's going to be that we're tracking because of like our COVID and our response to that, or is that just because of the nature of the program itself is just growing?
No, it's definitely a COVID response. I mean, our program looks so entirely different this year in terms of staff costs, supply costs, and just the actual food costs. So it's definitely just a different model, and it's more expensive. I anticipate when we go back to business as usual and our kitchens are delivering to students in buildings only, that those costs will come back in line. It is usually, it is usually very tightly managed program for that reason. I don't see any little hands.
No, there's some on the chat. So we have Kim first and then Jackie.
I haven't followed legislatively too far yet in the season, and I'm wondering what to ask for with, I'm assuming obviously Measure 98 because we saw results from that with graduation rates and there was I'm assuming a direct correlation there. But for student investment account, it seems like they would want to filter more dollars than pre-pandemic to those resources for the SEL support that students are going to need, just knowing how all that has been exaggerated during this time. And so I'm just curious if there are things you would like us specifically to be asking for in Salem.
Well, Thank you, Kim. I really just want to focus on that 9.6 level, I think, for state school fund and a 49-51 split. If we could get that to make our operating budget whole on its own, then we have the luxury of investing in social emotional learning, counseling service, student safety, class size, professional development. We have a whole lot of latitude with those Student Investment Act dollars if we don't have to use them to prevent cuts to the general fund. So definitely, I would say that. The federal dollars that we see coming to us are pretty non-specific. The second round, it's called ESSER 2, and it's pretty open for us to use in how we see fit to meet those student needs as well. But they are available to us through September of 2023. So that gives us this opportunity to plan out for a longer period of time.
Okay,
Jackie.
sorry. This question might have broader answers than just budget, but are we talking about the new development out in Cornelius that's about 1,200 homes that will fall into HSD and what that might change for enrollment? I mean, I know it's staggered and it's not immediate.
I'm going to yield again to Adam on that. He's been studying closely our enrollment and trends.
Yeah, we have included those projections, or Davis Demographics has been including those projections. For the most part, those are Free Orchards and Evergreen and Glencoe students. That was part of the reason we expanded at both Evergreen and Glencoe, because of the development that was happening there in Cornelius and also in North Plains. And the answer to the kinder question, we're down about 400 kinder students from where we were in 1920. So just, that's the dip we're seeing at the
So just
level.
big broad numbers. If we're down 1,000, 40% of that's kindergartners, and that's almost 2% of our total student body. We're just kinders that didn't show up at 19.5. If we're like 19.5, what's that, about 2%? And so the reason I bring it up is sort of to Michelle's point. We expect all these students to come back, all of these 6-year-olds who just didn't go, 5-year-olds who didn't go to school, and we're not alone. So there's going to be, it's 2% of 550,000. That's students in Oregon, right? So that's a big number of students across the state that we expect to come back. So it's not just us; it's going to be a thing everywhere.
Yeah, it will definitely be a thing everywhere. We've been in conversation with all of the districts in the region as well as all the large districts, and we actually fared better than some in terms of the number of students that chose not to participate this year in the traditional way. So we believe that next year, the 21-22 school year, there'll be a significant increase, especially at the kindergarten level.
Thank you all. This is the beginning of many of our times together. I want to extend again a very special thank you to our budget committee members for joining us tonight. It's wonderful to see you. And again, if there are specific questions that you guys are thinking of or would like to, you have friends that are interested and want to know more, I'm available to help with that. So thank you. Thank you, Adam, for your help.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next item on the agenda is award contracts with Adam Stewart.
Yes, I warned you last meeting that I was going to be seeing you. You were going to be seeing a lot of me over the next few weeks. I have 3 contract awards for this evening. The first is for the Groner Elementary project, and that is to award the contract to Inline Construction. Inline has also done work for us at Reedville and at Newberry. And then award the contract for Pathways Center to FiveStar Builders. FiveStar has done multiple projects for us during the course of this bond program. And then the Peter Bosco improvement project is also being awarded to FiveStar Builders. So I'm happy to answer any questions about any of these. I would say generally it was a very competitive bidding environment that we were in. We had lots of interest from lots of contractors, and it's a good thing. And I'll be back at the end of the month with, I think, 3 more contracts to award. So anyway, happy to answer questions about any of these. Mark.
More a comment than a question, I guess. I'm glad to see, just myself personally, Inline and FiveStar back. I'm glad to see that people with whom we've worked before and had great success before are still interested in working with us, and hopefully we will continue to have great success.
And both local firms. So yeah, doing great work.
Okay, there's no questions for Adam on this one. The 3 that I think that you're presenting, Adam, we have a motion on there for our board members.
I move that the Board of Directors award the contract for Groner K-8 School Improvements Project to Inline Construction in the amount of $1,793,560.
Second.
I'll second.
I think I heard Jackie first or Lisa? Jackie.
Well,
okay.
yeah, pick one of us.
It's okay. I was writing down. So it has been moved by Martin and seconded by Jackie. Are there any further discussion? I also just want to say I'm really happy to see in our bid tabulations that we are having a lot of competition over our project, which is great to see in this current environment. So if there are no other questions or discussion, please signify your vote in the chat. Okay, the ayes are Martin Granum, Lisa Allen, Jackie Spross, Mark Watson, Sheehan Kim, Yadira Martinez, and myself. The motion carries. Next item, Adam.
I move that the Board of Directors award the contract for Miller Education Pathways Center design build project to FiveStar Builders in the amount of $2,299,942.
Second.
So it has been moved by Jackie and seconded by Yadira. Is there any further discussion on this item or anything? Okay, seeing none, please signify your vote in the chat. Yes votes are Lisa Allen, Sheehan Kim, Jackie Spross, Yadira Martinez, Mark Watson, Martin Granum, and myself. The motion carries. Got one more.
I move that the Board of Directors award the contract for Peter Bosco Improvement Project to FiveStar Builders in the amount of $572,442.90.
Second.
So it has been moved by Jackie and seconded by Yadira. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, please signify your vote in the chat. Yes votes are Martin Granum, Jackie Spross, Lisa Allen, Sheehan Kim, Yadira Martinez, Mark Watson, and myself. The motion carries.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you, Adam.
Great job, Michelle.
Our next item on the agenda is discuss our superintendent evaluation and timeline. It says me, but it's me and you, Mike, I think.
You want to start or you want me to start?
I'll have you start.
All right. So this time each year, we take a look at the timeline and the process for the superintendent evaluation process. That's what we're doing tonight, is just giving that a preview. You'll remember last year we revisited the evaluation and we moved some things around. We also added standard number 9 that speaks to equity on page. And when we debriefed that a little bit at the end of last year, I think everyone believed that those were good changes and that the process was working how we wanted it to. With that in mind, on page 11, you will find the timeline and calendar for the evaluation process. That always kicks off right after spring break, right around there. I know that because I spend days during spring break putting my self-reflection together. So that's how I remember that. So you'll see the dates there. I don't need to read those to you. This is really just an overview of the process that we've continued to refine over the last several years, and this is where we've landed. So happy to answer any questions that you might have about this, or any suggestions that you would have. We also have the 9 standards listed on the following pages, and those begin on page 12 of your packet.
So one thing that I also just wanted to get feedback from our fellow board members is in the standards themselves, since we added that additional standards, but I think sometimes what we've had discussions or questions on how we're evaluating are maybe on the sub little descriptions of some of the standards where there might be some confusion. So I just wanted to ask and get some feedback before, Mike starts preparing this. If there's any items that, or, some of the sub bullets of one of those standards that you have questions about or need more clarity, to just let me know or let us know so that we can figure out how we want to update that. But if everything looks good and if we're still liking what we have, then we're good to go. I just wanted to make sure that I communicated that.
I do remember there was confusion last time, but I'll have to go back and look because I can't off the top of my head remember what that was.
Yeah, that feels right, like a couple of things, but also was like right at the outset of COVID when nothing really made sense. Like we were processing a lot of information at the same time, and so it feels like we had some pretty. I remember it being minor, but some feedback on a couple of items, but I don't remember it being substantial. And I also remember it being like getting the governor's order to shut down in the middle of all that.
And maybe if we can have Rose provide a link to last year's evaluation to kind of orient you to what we did last year and kind of connect that and refresh your memory. Could we do that, Rose?
Yes, I believe so. I believe actually there hasn't been any changes. This is the last year's evaluation, so there hasn't been any changes to this year yet.
But can we get a link to like our scoring or like our comments that we put on there? Because I think that's where people maybe put in some of those comments about, the confusing parts. There we go, consultant. But if nobody has any issues with our timeline, at least, I think that's what we're just getting some feedback as well. If that looks good for us to continue and move forward. I'm just looking for some head nods. All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Our next item is our announcement of school board elections with Beth Grazer.
Hello, everybody. So as you know, 4 of your positions are up for election this May, and that is positions 1, 2, 3, and 6, held by Martin, Mark, Jackie, and Erica. So we have announced those openings in Hot News and on our social media channels and on our website. We have also created a special page on the website that's a sub-page under Board of Directors called, and it's got a friendly link. So if you put hst.k12.or.us/2021 election, you'll see that page. That has the article that we just ran And it also has some of the resources that we plan to share in our upcoming prospective board member information sessions, of which there are two. The first one is on February 23rd at noon, and the next one is the following day at 3 p.m. So that's a couple of opportunities for people to join in with some of our board members that are not currently up for re-election, so that they can learn a little bit more about what it's like to go through the process of even registering to run, of running an election, of what to expect once you become a board member, different things like that. So we've, again, on that website, placed some of those resources, but we really encourage people who are interested in running to attend one of those information sessions, because that's really some valuable information from people who are obviously doing the job now and know exactly what to expect from the process.
Beth, I did have a question or comment, but TTSD did a similar, they kind of copied a little bit of what we did in having a page or a website that has information, and they really like that. And they actually went a little bit further ahead and really, I think, talked about a lot of, you know, what's expected, and maybe visiting that and seeing if we can update or refresh our page a little bit. I was thinking that it would also be helpful to just add a little bit more about like our value statement and information about, you know, what we see for our board when we have like our, whether it's like our working agreements as well as like last year's goals, to really kind of orient people to understand what the culture and climate might be of HSD. That would be helpful. And I think it has like a PDF from OSBA, some resources there, but it seems a little outdated. So maybe looking at that and see if there's some new material from OSBA that might be a little bit more helpful and newer.
Okay. Are you saying that you saw the page that is on our website? Because it literally just got created within the last hour.
Oh, there's a new one. Oh, I guess I was looking at an older one, but there was a link on our older one that moved over to OSBA, like a PDF from OSBA, but I'll go then and look at it.
Okay, but I will check out what's on TTSD's website too, and I can certainly post the working agreements and last year's goals. And if there are any other ideas about what we can add to that page to make it more useful, please let me know. I'll post the link to it in the chat here so you have it.
Thank you, Beth. Any other questions for Beth before we move on? All right. Okay, our next item on the agenda is also discussing our student representative positions and planning with Mike.
All right, thank you. As you know, several years ago, we made the decision to include student reps to the board. And I think that is a great decision that was made. And it's continued to be a real benefit to the board to provide a perspective that was missing before. So with that in mind, we know that we do this every year where we flip-flop the 3 schools that are represented with those 3 that are not. And we put a process together by which we start to generate awareness of this as a potential opportunity for students, as well as just to advertise it in a variety of different ways. So if you look on page 23 of your packet, you'll see that some of the things that we do, we have included board members, a committee of folks that do the interviews. They come forward with a recommendation. Last year, we had an opportunity for students to participate as well. If we stay under the quorum, then we have the ability, that would not need to be a public meeting. And I think that takes the pressure off of the students who are interviewing. But take a minute and just look through those bullet points, and you'll see there just the calendar. And then behind that, there is the application process, as well as the information that spells out what it takes to be eligible, as well as some of the commitments that would need to be made. So I guess maybe the way to ask the question is, based on the process that we've used and we've made adjustments over the last couple of years. Is there anything in particular you're hoping to see this year in the process that you haven't in the past couple of years? So it'd be a good place for the students to weigh in as well. As you went through the process, was there anything that made it more difficult or that you particularly thought was helpful to have in there? Please feel free to share your thoughts as well.
One thing that I really enjoyed was getting to actually speak to the student reps at the time. That really calmed my nerves a little bit before talking to people on the board.
I think if I remember correctly, we had and it might have been also like a virtual meeting, and our student reps that were existing at the time in the position had this open kind of session to answer questions and get some information before the interviews.
Maya, was it basically specific questions that they could answer for you and just to get a feel what it was about? Is that what was the most helpful?
Yes, it was basically ask any questions you want, and they were just kind of like a friend, it was a very friendly thing, so I really appreciated that.
Okay.
Sort of like a student rep town hall kind of thing?
Yeah.
During the application process? We have any students who might be interested in doing that this year?
Maybe all three.
Kind of like we do for the board members that are for the Beth was just talking about, the open session where people can come and find out what it's about. I had a question about if I know on here we have reference names of high school staff members, but do we want to think about maybe, it's all about the network that the students have of support to make this successful. Do we want to include maybe someone from the high school, a mentor for them to kind of help them through the process? I know Andrew had, I'm going to blank on his name. Anyway, Andrew had one of the teachers at his high school at Glencoe.
Yeah, I remember too. Yeah, and Jessica had the assistant principal at Century.
Yeah, I just think it might help to add one more person in there that could help mentor the students and kind of be their support system. I don't know. What do the students think about that? Do you think that that's too much, or would that be helpful?
I wonder if we were to, if a student who was applying didn't have someone in particular that they would feel comfortable going to, and we wouldn't want that to be a barrier, but we could make sure that as people indicate an interest, we could reach out to the principal or the assistant principal and ask them to check in and see if there's anything they need. We can do that kind of thing, and that might be a safer way to go about it, and just make sure that everyone has an opportunity to have an adult who's kind of walking them through the process.
Yeah.
And what I had been doing is sort of like engaging with the students in the early mentoring stages and figuring out, what adults in their life could be part of a help support structure or whatever. So I think both of Andrew and Jessica, I was fortunate enough to be the first mentor they had. And like, that was one of the first things I did was sort of reach out to them and figure out, a parent, try to get more than one caring adult in their life. And usually included somebody as part of the school as well. But, it could be someone in their church, someone in their family, could be somebody at school, just a couple of adults that can sort of work together with the school board folks to help the students be successful. So yeah, I think including that as part of the early mentoring stages is a great idea.
Any other suggestions?
I think another idea, depending on how the students feel about it, is we and OSP could also mentor them. I would volunteer to do that. I'm sure there's others on the cabinet that would volunteer to do that too, just because I think the experience as a board rep is amazing and awesome. But there's also school functions that they're part of, but without being an adult watching it, it's hard to know what that is all about. So we could also support them on that side too, if they'd be interested.
I think that's a great idea. I like that we kind of see things from that board member perspective in governance, but from the staff perspective also on things that they see day to day operationally or administratively will be a different vantage point.
So not put anybody on the spot, right now, but if there's any students that might want to conduct a town hall for other students, maybe let Rose know and we could set that up.
Yeah, we will definitely keep that on the calendar, and we'll do some individual outreach to make sure we can have some folks there. All right, well, I appreciate the feedback. Rose and I will get together and make a few adjustments to this, but other than that, it looks like we're largely ready to go.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Our next item is our student services update with Elaine Fox.
All right, I'll just wait for that slideshow to pop up here. Karina, are you posting that? Awesome. Okay, there we go. All right, well, good evening. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and to share some of the awesome work that our student services staff has been doing with our students who experience disability during the pandemic. It's definitely been a challenging time for all, and I could not be prouder of the way that our staff has risen to the occasion. So joining me tonight will be Director Wendy Ramos, who serves our Title Elementary schools. And we have Director Greg O'Mara, who serves our non-title elementary schools as well as our middle schools. We have Dr. Sarah Crane, who is our director who serves our high schools. And then, as you may or may not know, my name is Elaine Fox, and I'm the Executive Director of Student Services. All right, next slide, please. So we wanted to provide you just a bit of a framework for how we serve our students and how we conceptualize our service to our students who experience disability during this pandemic time. And so if you look to the right there where you see that blue kind of graphic, we have the student in the center, which is of course really important because everything we do, we need to connect directly back to our service to students. And so we kind of divided it into 4 main areas that we've been working on. So of course we have our comprehensive distance learning and more recently our limited in-person instruction. And that of course is critical because that allows us to serve our students' IEP goals and our goals that are not on their IEP. That instructional piece is obviously key. Then we move on to family support, and we know that if we can support our families, that they can support their students, and the whole system just works better, and we know that our student achievement is improved because of that. And so we try to do as much family support as possible, and we've increased that quite a bit during this pandemic time, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We do significant amounts of collaboration with our community. We cannot do our work alone. We need the partnership of many community organizations, and I'll be going into a little bit more detail about that. And then the other thing that we do is we really need to make sure that we have good interdepartmental collaboration and staff support. And special education cannot operate in a vacuum in Hillsboro School District. It's really important that we collaborate and connect with all of the existing structures and systems that are in place in order to fully and comprehensively support our students. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. All right.
Hi, I'm Wendy Ramos, one of the directors, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about instruction for students experiencing disabilities. Of course, always we anchor back to knowing every student by name, strength, and need, and teaching based on the Common Core state standards. And being in CDL is no different, and teaching the students who experience disabilities is no different. There's a few things that come when you teach students with with disabilities, there's some of those competing interests. There's the federal law, the IEP implementation, or the individual education plan, staff, community, and parent expectations. All of those factors are really important and need to be attended to with a lot of care. But ultimately, as Elaine said, the student must guide the instructional decisions. So in CDL, that's where we started with that base. But we want to share some of the instructional strategies that have been really successful in CDL. Though we know there's challenges, there's been a lot of success. Some of the strategies that may not seem as different from those you may have heard about from your general education teachers, because again, often best practices for students experiencing disabilities are also the best practices for students who don't experience a disability. One piece that CDL has allowed for was for more opportunities for students with disabilities to be a part of their general education classroom. In CDL, for instance, students have joined morning meetings and advisory in record numbers. The screen allows for a student to participate in multiple ways. So, you know, we have the chat feature, right? We have the visuals by sharing the screen. Verbally, you can unmute. But this just gives a variety of ways for students who may have different things that are inhibiting them from participating, from really being a part of that experience. The other thing is, of course, that fabulous onset of the breakout group in Google Meets that really gave that ability for students to have a place to go for that one question or that one little jolt that they might have needed during class to keep them going, or that little explanation. And with that breakout group, it's really easy for a student to access that, meet up with an adult, get that need met, and then return right back to class. And nobody needs to know that they've left or that they needed that help or any of that stigma that may have gone with that piece. It also, as adults, really allows us to take a step back and not to intervene too early, and to really let that student lead when that access has happened. So those have been some really great positives. Greg's going to talk to you about a couple more.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I'm Greg O'Mara. I'm one of the directors of Student Services. And I want to, of course, my dog decided to talk right when I'm coming online, as usual. Provide you with a few examples from our leadership team in their noticings. One team member said, video modeling has been an excellent strategy to show students new academic skills. The video can be accessed at any time and multiple times. This would allow for parents to see it and better support their child. The bonus is it's also great for supporting staff with new skills as well. So it allows that other staff member to opt into a video and see what's working for our students with special needs. Another strategy that has been successful, as Wendy mentioned, is the use of breakout rooms for regulating emotions. As she mentioned in Meets, the teacher can set up a breakout room that has a choice board, which is another great tool of options. And then the student could choose one of the rooms to go into, such as whole body listening or breathing, and then return to class. The breakout room typically has a timer and an exit ticket to help keep them focused on the task and when to return to the class. We know this has been such a difficult experience for all, but the silver lining has been that we've been able to push ourselves instructionally and continue to deepen our students' focus instructionally through the variety of instructional models that Wendy has mentioned above. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Crane to continue the conversation.
Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. All right, so Slippy, as Elaine mentioned, is our nickname for Lippy with Student Services staff. I do want to let you know that this slide and the very last slide are just slightly different than what were in your board packet, so don't be surprised. As you know, we're doing Slippy at South Meadows Middle School 4 days a week in the afternoons, and we are having a ton of fun. Students are working one-on-one, either in a classroom of elementary students and staff or secondary students and staff. You can see from the pictures that one student is going for a walk and exploring the new space. That was on day one. Another is working next to her personal sink and making a successive approximation with her mask. Students are coming ready to work, and they look forward to breaks where they make new friends, go outside for sidewalk chalk art, play soccer, play basketball, or dance to go noodle. You may notice in the pictures that sometimes our learning happens in non-traditional ways, going on a walk and talking about numbers and letters, or making an art project while asking questions about colors, drawing with chalk outside, and practicing shapes. You can see we're also doing activities that are more expected and look like typical school. One student became a reader 2 weeks ago when, after less than 6 hours in person, it clicked for him that letters, when you put them together, can make words. The staff have been absolutely incredible. They seem so happy to be back in person with students and have been adjusting to wearing all the PPE and practicing social distancing. We did send out applications for adding students, grades 7 through 12, last week. And we, of course, also have students who are attending their regular school because they meet the criteria for the school LIPI. Next slide.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's been happening since late summer with our assessment centers. And so we know that many of the processes and procedures have changed during the pandemic. However, federal and state requirements related to timelines to assessment did not change during the pandemic. And as such, Hillsboro School District has provided access for in-person assessment and virtual assessment for all of our students that needed it. Our staff has done an outstanding job thinking outside of the box to meet these requirements. And as you can see on the slide, since late September, we've operated an assessment center that was at Imlay Elementary School. And then right at the start of the school year, we transitioned that assessment center to Miller Education Center West at the Annex, at a portable building that was currently not being, well, many of the buildings weren't being used with our kiddos, but the Annex was a prime location for our school psychologists to set up and do virtual and or in-person assessments. And then we also utilized Peter Bosco for our speech language pathologists. And so as you can see, our speech language pathologists have performed over 100 in-person and virtual assessments since October. And our school psychologists have performed over 300 in-person assessments during that same timeline. Karina, if you could advance the slide, and I'll turn it back over to Elaine.
All right, we are so lucky in Hillsboro, and this is one of my favorite things about our district, that we have such great collaboration with our colleagues, and it's really essential that we do that in order to serve our students comprehensively. And I do not think that is typical, and I think that's a really special part of Hillsboro. So just going to go over a few things here about our collaboration. So we definitely collaborate with other departments on a regular basis, including, the EL department. We collaborate with our elementary executive directors, our high school executive directors, and all kinds of other groups. We're very happy to be doing that. We provide several forms of team meeting opportunities for our staff. And so we have multiple specialist groups that we need to provide opportunities for professional development, collaboration, consultation, and problem solving. So that would be groups such as our school psychologists and our support specialists. Also, we have groups that are like occupational therapists and physical therapists. There's many specialists we have that need an opportunity to work with themselves and each other, work amongst themselves and each other. We have a great system with the Hillsboro Education Association that we've developed this year that's really been successful for us, and we're excited about it. We meet with them weekly and we problem solve with them. We have an agenda that we can both add to, and we just kind of troubleshoot proactively with them and try and really just collaborate in a way that we ensures that we can serve our students in a way that's smooth and that is very comprehensive. So we also are able to regularly collaborate with our HR department, and we regularly meet with them. We have many, many staff that serve our students, and we just want to make sure that we're supporting them in a way that they can support our students in the very best way possible. We had a very interesting problem at the beginning of the pandemic to solve, and that is that we had over 100 case managers out in our many, many buildings who were having to work in a completely new way. And they have done the most amazing job figuring out how to work with our students. But especially in the beginning, and even now, they have several questions that come up because they're dealing with new issues that they haven't had to deal with before, and just trying to find really creative ways to problem solve. So we developed a system in which they could enter questions in every day into a format that we have that's kind of a running log. And then every evening we go in and respond to those questions. So by the time they wake up the next morning and start their day, they hopefully have answers. Occasionally, they have questions that we have to research and we might not know the answers to either. So we do that and just let them know that we will be getting back to them as soon as possible. However, that's been a really great system that's been successful for us in terms of keeping consistent communication, because we know if one person has a question, that generally means many more do as well. We also have really tried to keep open office hours to be available to staff. We know that this is a new way of working, and especially when we're working with over 3,000 individualized education plans, that many individualized questions come up. And so we maintain open office hours to be available to our staff. We regularly provide professional development for our staff, and we've been doing that over this last year. An example of that is that we have used the Hello Foundation training modules. And the Hello Foundation is an organization that supports speech language pathologists and has developed some training modules with a focus on telepractice. And telepractice is something that our SLPs have had to learn how to do to serve our students remotely, because typically they were used to serving them in person. So that's been just the kind of example of, or an example of the kind of professional development that we do. Okay, could we advance to the next slide, please? All right, so parent support. This has been a really integral part of our program for a long time in student services. However, we've really had to revise it to try and meet the needs of everybody during this last year. And so pre-pandemic, we were having parent evenings about 4 times a year. They would be at the AC. We would provide snacks and childcare, but people would definitely need to come in person. And we would have informational evenings that lasted a couple hours. That obviously didn't work during the pandemic. So what we have switched to is having a once a month shorter time that we provide parent support, and it's an hour, and we have a pretty specific format. We generally have a very specific topic we review with them in the beginning. And so I've put some examples of those topics under there, anything from managing stress to mental health, which is going to be the topic of the upcoming one this month on February 25th. So we generally have a speaker informational session for the first 30 minutes. And then the second 30 minutes are really a Q&A time where parents can really ask any of our administrators or staff who also attend our parent evenings any sort of questions that they want. And so that's been a very successful format for us. One thing that's been kind of cool about the virtual format is not only the increased frequency of our meetings, but we've just had veterans, for example, of another parent group that we participate in. Additional ways that we work with parents, our meetings, of course, we have IEP meetings and other just individual meetings with them. We give lots of individual phone calls. We communicate with them via letters that are even in addition to the information that the district sends out as a whole for information that might be very special ed specific. We have implemented a semester parent newsletter, and that is a new piece that we've done this last year. We had not done that before, and this is a great piece that Dr. Crane helped us put in place, which has been fantastic. And then we also have a social media following both on Twitter and on Facebook. And so anyway, those are kind of the main ways that we support parents right now. And we have over 3,000 families again to support. And so we're just really thankful for their involvement and their great support of their children. All right, why don't we advance to the next slide? Okay. Oh, sorry, was there a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question.
Yeah.
So is the parent support available like in Spanish or other languages, and is translation provided at all these meetings?
Yeah, Dara, thank you so much for asking that question. And I should have put this in the slide that all of the meetings are bilingual and all the written materials are bilingual. And then we also have additional language interpretation and translation provided. In fact, we had a request at our last meeting for a Vietnamese translation. And so we provided that. So I apologize for not throwing that in that last slide, but thank you for asking that question. All right, anything else before we move on here? Okay, so I'll speak briefly just about community partnerships. We couldn't do the work that we do alone. We have many community partners that we work with in order to serve our students. And so just a few highlighted ones from over the course of this last year. This is probably the most obvious one, the Washington County Health Department, which our nurses have collaborated with and done just an amazing job bringing information back to our district. I just want to give a huge shout out to our nurses and all the phenomenal work they've been doing during the course of this last year that has been new and different for them as well. And so we are super fortunate to have some amazing people on the job there. We also have a very important organization that's probably the most important organization in terms of family support that's community-based that we work with called FACT, and that's called Families and Communities Together. They are a federally funded and mandated parent training and information center in Oregon. Ours is called FACT. Every state has one, and they provide a ton of support to families whose students experience disability. We work very closely with FACT. They advocate for students, but they also come and they do trainings for us. They provide person-centered planning sessions for our students. And they also put on a number of community events that we have participated in as well as a staff. And so we're really excited to have a great relationship and partner with FACT. In addition to that, we work very closely with Northwest Regional ESD. We have about 45 students who we are unable to serve in the district because their support needs are fairly intensive. And so they are served through our programs that are managed by Northwest Regional ESD. Right now, those programs are providing limited in-person instruction as well. And so many of our students are getting their social and emotional needs and as well as instructional needs met through our ESD programs through comprehensive distance learning and both that and the limited in-person instruction. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention that we do a lot of collaboration and consultation and brainstorming with our neighboring districts. We really try, and we've had some unique and challenging issues to deal with over the course of the last year. And so it's been great to have a group where we can kind of have a good brain trust, where we give our ideas to share our ideas with each other, and just kind of try and understand how someone else might be doing it to see if we can get any ideas from that. And so we're lucky to have very good professional relationships in that regard. So those are some ways that we really function within the community. Okay, we're going to go ahead and advance to the next slide now. I believe Wendy will take it over from here.
Yeah, so we just wanted to make sure you had some additional resources of things that we put out as far as different websites. We have the inclusion rubric website if you want to know more details about how to make your environment more inclusive or your instruction more inclusive. Case managers get a monthly newsletter with hot topics that are happening in special ed. We do coffee conversations with various folks around the district or beyond in the community. We have a great special education overview if you kind of want SPED 101 in various languages. 321 Insight is great for that training. It's great for parents. It's great for staff. It gives you a lot of things on trauma-informed care, or again, if you have a certain disability you want to know more information about. We started our first biannual parent newsletter, like Elaine mentioned. Of course, we're represented on the beautiful HSD website. And then we have a great community partners page that has just multiple community partners. If you are a parent of a student with a disability and you want to kind of get more information, that's a great place to go. And then, of course, Fact Oregon, which Elaine had mentioned before. So check those out. They're awesome, and we're thankful to have them.
All right, let's move on to the final slide, which I believe is questions. Does anybody have any questions for us? All right, no questions. Oh, Mark has a question, looks like.
Oh, and Martin used the raised hand. I should have used the raised hand. Oh, well. And don't feel immediate need to answer the question. Maybe it's more of a thought experiment, but it's phrased in the form of a question. So you sort of highlighted those silver linings that CDL has helped us find, and I really appreciate you highlighting those. So what I'm hoping is that, you know, what barriers do you see when we're back 100% in person to incorporating those silver linings into our everyday strategies? Like, so, you know, if there's an obvious answer, great. If it's technology, if it's, but you know, let's be thinking about the kinds of things we can do to overcome whatever barriers to integrating the successes of CDL that we've learned into our everyday programs. So.
This is something, yeah, it's such a good point. We have been talking a lot about this. Like, how do we not lose what has been going well for students that it's been going well for? An example is that being online and not having to show your camera, while frustrating to the teacher, reduces a lot of anxiety for some of our students. And also, if you have autism and social nuance is really tough for you, this is really nice because you don't have to worry about social nuance, you know? And so we really have been thinking through that. One of the things that we think will be really beneficial is just having the one-to-ones at high school with the technology, because there are so many accommodations that are just normal on Google Classroom that just happen for anybody. And so students no longer have to say, oh, I need that read to me, or I need the other version, or I need a modified assignment. It's so easy on Google Classroom, and now the teachers know how to do it. So we're really hopeful that they will continue to embrace the Google Classroom, and will provide training for, you know, anything that they're feeling uncomfortable about doing when we're in person as well.
I just want to highlight what kind of that last part that Sarah said is that, you know, we used to think of the graphic organizer, for instance, as this amazing accommodation that we would put on an IEP. And I think what CDL is going to do is help us to move things right from that like amazing new thing to everybody has access to that, and it is just the new norm. And so that's just a beautiful thing, right, for students with disabilities, because again, it's just part of the flow. It's not this one-off piece that they have to ask for, which is awesome.
Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Elaine and Wendy and Sarah and Greg, thank you for really just an amazing presentation. And what I wanted to comment on was most of us don't have this lived experience of understanding special education and the very unique needs and circumstances of our students and families. And so a window into that world, and I would encourage everybody to, at some point, step into that world, is the Parent Advisory Council, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, the monthly meetings. They're just a wonderful opportunity for others to experience what happens in that world. In the I was blown away. I attended one recently. First of all, I'm blown away at our staff and the amazing work that they're doing. And you'll meet some of those people. It's its own language. It's a subset within the K-12 world, and so some of the terminology and shorthand is really foreign, and you get in there, move in those circles, and learn some of the jargon, and you're so much richer for that. Certainly as a board member, but it's heartwarming. You understand what a deep bench we have in HSD to meet the very unique and specialized needs of many of the students and families. And I emphasize the word family. I think uniquely in the special education world, we engage with families and community partners. Elaine mentioned that several times. We're very leveraged in this regard because we can't meet all the needs of these special education students unilaterally as a district. So we rely on community partners. And that really comes through when you step into that world and take a peek. So Elaine and team, thank you for a great presentation, and thank you for opening up that parent advisory council to all of us to step into that world and be enriched. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just had two comments and maybe thoughts or feedback. The first one was thinking about just how we make, how we operate our district more inclusive, beyond just like for our students, but also for our community members or families. And I was thinking about this in another hat that I wear and looking at how sometimes we think about like ADA compliance, and that's the bare minimum that we need to do federally. But what can we do more, and how we share information about how we do business, and thinking about community members at large that are interested in our operations or what's going on in the district, how we share information that is accessible to different community members that have specific needs with communication. So I was just thinking about how do we hear, we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know if we're missing that mark out in the public. So just wanted to get some feedback. I also was thinking back to what Martin was saying about how this is, there's this own language, and it's a lot to learn, and thinking about a lot of the, especially in that early stages, kindergarten and pre-K, families that are first encountering what it means to have a child that has specific needs, and how to navigate those spaces and advocate for their student. And is there something that we provide, like even just like a resource or information for parents that are just entering this world, that are trying to figure out what is it that they need to do and how do they do it?
So for ECSE students, which is early childhood special education, had to throw a new acronym at you, sorry. For those students, every spring, we actually have a meeting with the incoming team and the outgoing team. So the ECSE teacher and then the special education teacher at the school. And that helps families to understand and start to learn, because even though the law is all IDEA, the rules are different for pre-K than they are for school age. And it is part of the reason that we created the parent overview as well, so that as students come in either as kindergartners or they're maybe third grade, fifth grade, and people start saying, that maybe an evaluation is necessary, it's such a complicated process. And like Martin said, we make it just roll off our tongue because we've done it so many times. And so it's really important for us to slow down and remember that parents may be doing it for the first time or the third time. That's still not near the experience we have. And so it's important that we slow down and help parents understand. And then we're also working on something for perhaps to go like in medical offices and things like that, that also just kind of walks through, because we know sometimes doctors will say, have you talked to your school about special education? And we want to help parents at every moment to understand. And then the last thing is that at some point, sometimes kids exit. And that can be really scary to parents if they've had this support for their student. And so when the student is no longer eligible, we want them to kind of know that's possible right from the beginning, so that it can be a celebration or an excitement to move on to a different thing, but not a scary thing.
Thank you so much for that information. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Elaine. Thank you, team, for coming on. Sarah and Wendy, Greg.
Thank you so much.
Okay, our next item on our agenda is our vaccination update and return to school information with Mike, Travis, and Dale.
Thanks, Erica. And thanks to the Special Education Administrative team. Appreciate the information that you shared. For this next portion, we're going to provide a number of updates for you regarding return to school. There's a number of us that are going to be speaking as we go through these slides, but we're going to kick it off with Travis.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Erica. The first slides are updates on where we stand with the vaccines and some data around Washington County. So, Corina, if you could advance one. We're in wave 3 of vaccinations, which makes vaccination appointments available to middle school staff, and waves 2 and 1. So anybody who hasn't gotten their opportunity yet can also still sign up. The thing that's holding us back right now is that vaccines are in short supply as more folks get in line. So whereas last week, the Oregon Convention Center had 15,000 doses, this week they only have 5,000. And so what they're hoping to do is get more vaccines so that they can complete wave 3. It looks like we may get more appointments opening up later this week, but as of today, there were only about 20% of educators in wave 3 who have appointments. So we still have a long way to go to get that third wave vaccinated, and then that'll be followed by wave 4, which includes high school folks and central office folks and a number of different types of coaches, for example. We've been publishing this every chance we get, the My Health support line, which is Legacy's app. And then we have our own staff staffing a hotline bilingually so that folks can be supported with the chat bot and the different tasks they have to do to get to the convention center. I also would say that we still have some of our nurses, for example, offering time at the convention center to help accelerate the process. We've had volunteers from across the region helping to make that successful. The next one shows today's metrics going down yet again. So from 183.9 to 165.6 in Washington County, which is below the 200 per 100,000 threshold that we need to even consider bringing secondary students back for hybrid, and well below the 350 threshold that we need to talk about hybrid learning for elementary students. I'm seeing question marks. Are those fresh question marks? I'll pause.
Mine is. Travis, so do you have an estimate of how many HSD teachers that are in the first and second wave got vaccinated? Or do we just have just general information?
Just general information. We're not collecting data on who has gotten the first and second doses.
Okay, so we don't have any HSD specific data?
Correct.
Okay.
So moving on to the next slide, please. I'll pass to my HR friends to give an update on bargaining.
Thanks, Travis. Good evening, everyone. Just want to let you know about four things in regards to our negotiation updates. We've been in conversations with our union around the impact of returning to hybrid, and especially around working conditions and what those look like. And then another component that we've had conversation, of course, is around health and safety that arise as staff are looking to return to hybrid and in person. So as we continue these collaborative and productive conversations, we'll be able to work through both of those pieces around working conditions and health and safety. And we are continuing to remain focused on our track and committed to bringing our pre-K to second grade students back on March 29th and expanding from there. So that's our negotiations update. Any questions?
Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Connor. And just a word about the graphic here. I do want to circle back to the interactive live stream conversation once we see the video that Beth has made at the end of this presentation. I think it gives a little more imagination to what that would look like for students. And while we know that there's no perfect delivery model for hybrid, we stay focused on what we think is best for students, and we're continuing to explore this model for allowing students to stay in their cohorts, learning both face-to-face and CDL when they have when we have them in AB cohorts, or daily in the classroom in K through 2. So we'll come back to this in just a minute if you have any questions about this. Corina, if you could go one. So I'll kick to Casey for meals and inclement weather planning.
Yeah, thanks, Travis.
Karina, can you advance one more slide? One of the challenges that we're facing as we begin to bring more students back into school, which is a good challenge to have, is the ability to continue with our meal delivery service. So we're starting to look at some options where we're able to continue with the service that we have and also free up some of our school buses. So to do that, we're going to have a couple of transition dates in order to provide students and families a similar access to what we're delivering meals now. So starting March 1st, to free up some of our buses, we're going to deliver all of our walk zone meal deliveries on the same bus route that we're doing now, but we're going to utilize box trucks and delivery vans, kind of our own Uber Eats type of a model. Our buses will then be able to gain some of their drivers and actual buses back, and they will deliver to our outskirts, our outside of walk zones, similar to what we did in the spring with the 23 bus routes. Then once we hit that target date of March 29th, when we're hopeful that pre-K to hybrid will come back, and we'll need all of our buses to go on student routes, we're going to transition to all of our deliveries using vans or box trucks. And we'll shift a little bit on the mechanism of how we're delivering those meals. So currently, each family gets a daily pickup or a drop off of a meal for that day. To be more efficient, starting at the end of March, we're going to do a weekly box where families will get all of their meals that they're currently getting in one box, and we'll be able to distribute those meals in a couple of ways with the vans and box trucks, and also have the ability for families to pick them up at their home school. So those are some of the shifts that we're looking for, and that'll be able to optimize all of our resources to continue with the delivery service that we're doing now and free up our buses. I will just one fact that has happened is we've produced about a little over 1 million meals for students this school year, which has been great to be able to get those meals out in the community. So really a big thanks to our transportation and nutrition services staff who've been able to do that. Our goal is to be able to continue that as we bring students back. Are there any questions I could answer about our meal transition plan?
I think you have a question on there from Jack.
Okay.
Where is the funding from this specifically coming that's allowing us to do that? Because I know there's federal programs that we're tapping into. I just wanted to ask where that funding is coming from.
So the funding will remain the same as it is for the USDA school food programming. That does not change as far as that. The funding where we will need to produce some COVID-related funding will be from any vehicles that we need to rent to do this. We're trying to utilize as many as we currently have. And then the staff we're going to utilize our ESS sub-staff that we have classified ESS employees that will be able to utilize that. So, we haven't used so far really any sub-staff. So there will be a sub-cost for the hours that we use for delivery of this. I'm not hearing any more or seeing any more questions.
Casey, I think you got one more slide on the plan, inclement weather.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I forgot when we did it earlier, we had Nate on here to go over this. So the big S word is rearing its head for this weekend for snow. So we're looking at some options for delivery of meals should we have inclement weather. So this chart kind of gives an example of what we're going to do. So Thursday, hopefully we get more of an understanding of what we're going to come across. But on Thursday, what we're planning right now is to hand out both Thursday and Friday meals. This will allow that if Friday is a snow day, families will still have a meal for that day. Friday, if there is no inclement weather and we're up and going on Friday, we will then hand out the holiday Monday meal set. So so that'll get us through that weekend. And then on Tuesday, hopefully everything's resolved and we'll be able to hand out 2 meals on Tuesday so that we'll be able to make up that Mondayness for the holiday. Hopefully that chart kind of makes sense of our plan. And hopefully we don't have any interruptions with the weather and we're able to continue.
You had to put the word snowpocalypse in there, didn't you? You just had to do it, didn't you? Just saying.
Well, I didn't. I've been giving Carol, our transportation executive director, a hard time all week on it. And so I think Nate, our nutrition services director, put that in just for her.
Okay. I love it. I do. That's awesome.
Thanks, Casey.
Okay, no problem.
The next slide is about our timeline. So I'm getting questions about, are we slowing down the timeline because the vaccines aren't coming in sufficient numbers? Are we speeding up the timeline because the case rates are going down? The answer to those questions is that we're staying on track, we think, for the, as Mike alluded to, March 29th start date with pre-K through 2 hybrid. And in the meantime, ramping up limited in-person and activities to the extent possible. And then once we reach after spring break, March 29th, we would trigger in subsequent weeks different new groups of students to come back for hybrid. Please click one more. So today, one more, please, Karina. Today we shared, back one, please. We shared with our admin team some more guidance on limited in-person expansion. Refreshing everyone's memory about the allowable categories for prioritizing students for LIPI. And so while we're planning for hybrid, we're also going to be expanding limited in person. We don't want to wait to serve those students. Dale, do you want to talk through any details of the LIPI planning?
We just chatted with our principals today and kind of went over the steps, and it's a great opportunity for us to do some backward mapping because we know that we have to be cognizant of transportation and all the pieces at play that Carol and her team are working through, as well as just making some really good database decisions. So we are anticipating some expansion, and principals got the guidance today, and they'll be reaching out to Fran, Audrey, and I so that we can kind of have a big picture view on it.
Thanks, Dale. And the next slide shows a map that we created for elementary, middle, and high school leaders in order to backward map from March 28th or March 29th and beyond. And so this gives us weekly tasks to accomplish. We've been working on this system for a while now, but now that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, we are putting to-do lists together and making calendars for ourselves so that we hit critical points with communications, with staffing, with instructional development, professional development, etc. So these plans are in place now, and we've been talking about them right up till today. The final slide, I will kick to Beth to explain what she and her team have been working on.
Thank you, Travis. So this is a video that will be sent out with the return to school planning update that we have ready for tomorrow afternoon. It will also be what kicks off the return to school Q&A session that Mike is holding tomorrow at noon. The Spanish version of the video will obviously go out with tomorrow's updates and will also be what kicks off his session for Spanish speakers on Thursday evening. So it is 6.5 minutes long, and our intent here was just to really give parents a sense of what a day in the life of hybrid would look like and some of the various health and safety protocols that we have in place. So we'll take a look And then afterward, if you have any questions, we can address those at that time.
Give me a second and I will put it up.
Karina, we've been having the most luck opening that link into a tab and then leaving your mic on and playing it like that. That helps you at all. I want to publicly apologize for giving our tech department tech advice. That was out of line.
I'm pretty sure they ignored it anyway. I think you're okay. There we go.
Hi, I'm Beth Grazer, Communications Officer for the Hillsboro School District. Today, we'd like to make sure students and families know their instructional options for the remainder of the school year. And for those who elect to return to school in person, what a typical day will look like. Students who are currently enrolled in Hillsboro Online Academy will remain at HOA for the rest of this school year. Students who are currently engaged in comprehensive distance learning through their home school will have two options. They can remain in CDL full-time, or they can participate in hybrid instruction. For students in grades pre-K through 2, hybrid instruction is based on a daily model where students come to school in person for a slightly shortened school day and continue to do CDL for a portion of their music, PE, and extra supports. For students in grades 3 through 6, hybrid instruction is based on a 2-day per week model, which means that students will be coming to school in person either Monday and Thursday or Tuesday and Friday for a slightly shortened school day and doing CDL on the other days of the week. The hybrid model for students in grades 7 through 12 is still being determined. Our goal is for students to come to school in person for at least a portion of their week and do CDL for the remainder of the week. Because the health metrics and cohorting guidelines are different for secondary students, we don't yet have all the specifics for how their experience will be structured. Now, enough of me. Let's catch up with some students and see what a day in the life of the hybrid model will look like. Some students will ride the bus to school, while others will provide their own transportation to school. In all cases, parents will be asked to evaluate their child's health each day before sending or taking them to school. If they are exhibiting a fever, cough, or any of the other symptoms in the Too Sick for School flyer, they need to keep their child at home. Their child can engage in CDL if they feel well enough, even if they are supposed to be attending in person that day. Upon boarding the bus, the driver will ask the student how they are feeling. If the student seems to be doing well, they will be asked to sit in the first available seat with an X nearest the rear of the bus. Only siblings or members of the same household can sit together on the bus. Otherwise, only one child per seat is allowed. Upon arrival at the school, the students will line up on pavement markers to keep them appropriately spaced. They will then receive a health screening, which will include a touch-free temperature scan of their forehead and a general question about how they're feeling. When it's time to enter the building, students will use hand sanitizer and follow the instructions of the adults around them to proceed to their classroom, keeping their hands to themselves and maintaining appropriate spacing. Please note that all students and staff are expected to wear a face mask at all times, except when they are eating, taking an approved mask break in a designated location, or if they have a medical condition that necessitates accommodation. Students will arrive in their classroom and place their belongings in a designated location. Students will have the opportunity to wash their hands with soap and water, and then they will take their seat, which has 6 feet of space all around it. The teacher will most likely be teaching some students in person and some students remotely in an interactive live stream model that includes both direct instruction and independent or group work time. The students who are attending remotely will often be projected on a screen or visible within Google Meet, so their classmates who are attending in person can see them. Students will eat lunch in their classrooms and get to talk to their friends, and have recess and movement breaks. There will also be plenty of opportunities to wash or sanitize their hands and use the restroom throughout the day. It's important to note that schools are still warm and inviting places where students will socialize with one another and receive the types of social emotional supports that just aren't possible in a CDL model. We are committed to engaging and connecting with students while following all recommended health and safety guidelines. If a child does feel sick during the course of the school day, they will be sent to the office to be evaluated. Every school will have an isolation room for students who are exhibiting signs or symptoms of possible COVID-19 or other communicable diseases. They will be supervised by an adult and wait in the isolation room until they are picked up by a parent or guardian. If your child is sent home from the isolation room with COVID-19-like symptoms, instructions will be given to you on next steps and when your child can return to school. If a classroom cohort has one or more individuals test positive for COVID-19, families will be notified. Next steps will be based on consultation with the district nurse team and Washington County Public Health. Specific individuals and possibly the entire cohort may need to revert to CDL for up to 14 days. If a school has multiple cohorts that are impacted by COVID-19, the entire school may need to revert to CDL for up to 14 days. Specifics of each circumstance would be determined as they arise. We know there are likely many more questions, but hopefully this video has provided you with the basics of what to expect from a return to school experience. Additional information will be provided over the coming weeks, both from the district level and from your school principal. Any family not enrolled in Hillsboro Online Academy will be asked to respond to a brief survey in the near future regarding their plans for their student, either to remain strictly in CDL or engage in the hybrid model. Your timely response to that survey will be very helpful to our planning process. We know this year has been difficult for many reasons, and we thank each and every one of you sincerely for hanging in there. Your flexibility and resilience are inspiring, and we really appreciate your partnership in this effort. For more information, please see the 2020-21 school year page of our website. Thank you.
All right, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great video. Thank you, Beth. And team, everyone.
I did just want to add that in the video, which we shot last week, so this is how fast things change, but we are actually ready to send the parent survey to students, to parents of students who are in pre-K through 6. So that will go out with the communication tomorrow afternoon, just so you know.
Mark, the question.
So the sort of delay that or the phase 3 of whatever is sort of a little bit slower, that really wouldn't even impact our K2 because that phase is already passed, right? So I guess the question is, what warning signs do you see about not getting back on March 20th? I mean, something can happen, always can happen, but what if we should be worried about anything? What should we be worried about, or are we just expecting that we're going to be back?
I think our confidence grows, especially as we see the metrics come down. That, like you said, Mark, those educators have the opportunity and will get their second dose in 2 weeks. The one thing that I worry about is some of the forecasts from the medical professionals that predict a spike in COVID cases in mid-February. We're trending in the right direction in Washington County, but we need to wear our masks and practice our safety practices ongoing, or else we are in danger of that a new wave.
We do believe, though, that pre-K2 will be on track, And we also have received information that the bottleneck in the vaccines that's going to last for a couple weeks here is going to open up here in the next couple weeks. And so we feel like we're going to be on track, especially for pre-K2. And then we'll just have to continue to monitor and determine what percentage of the educators have got through when their time comes.
Yeah, I think Patrick Allen at OHA called it a 2-week pinch, and then it really ramps up considerably after that.
Question from Yadira.
Travis, on that slide that has the timeline, it shows that like the pre-K through second grade starts on March 29th, but it ends like in May. Is there something to that, or is that supposed to continue on?
I think if I'm picturing it right, it's like the green bars are supposed to go on into the future.
Yeah, okay.
It's just that window that we were trying to show in the slide. I appreciate that question.
Okay.
I know that this is, part of the information you provided around like high school age students. And so just wondering when our next update might be around what that looks like for high school students.
We continue to work on that model. As you're likely aware, there's been a number of districts around us that have really indicated that they don't believe they're going to be able to come back at the secondary level or at the high school level. That's not where we want to go. We continue to believe that we will be able to find a way to do that. What that looks like and how many days a week that is remains to be seen. Dale has a team of folks that are working on it right now. And I'm just to be brutally honest, the cohort size is really a challenge for everybody involved. And it's the reason that some districts have started to indicate they don't know if they'll be able to be back in person. Dale, do you want to provide any other update on that?
I would say that's spot on. I mean, between the cohort size and the number of square feet in a given room, and the number of kids we can have on campus at a given time, those are all just real big challenges. So we know academically that we have some things in place to support kids. We know that expanding LIPI will be really important to support kids, but we really do have a goal of trying to find a way to bring all of our kids back in for as often, as many days as we can. We know that in addition to their academics, we also want to have eyes on them in terms of their social emotional health. We want to be able to connect them with peers and with adults, and we haven't seen them. So, all of our teachers know that when we can get our kids back in our space, we can do the best job of knowing what their needs are, knowing what their strengths are, and how to plan for the fall as well. So we're working really hard. We meet again at the end of this week to brainstorm some more ideas and look at some square footage maps that Casey and his team are working on. And we're just moving forward, planning for the best.
We also believe that over the next couple of days, there is likely going to be additional guidance or modifications coming to guidance when it comes to athletics and activities. As you'll probably remember, that when it comes to contact sports or indoor athletics, that really is supervised and monitored at the state level, and that is not an OSAA decision. OSAA makes a lot of decisions, but there are some things that are above them and out of their control. So we believe that we're going to be getting an update in the next couple of days, and our folks stand ready to offer whatever we possibly can to the degree that is allowable. So we'll continue to chip away at that as we get more information.
I was just wondering if you mentioned the survey that's going out to parents it's only for K through 6, if that's accurate. So I guess I'm wondering, as we're trying to figure out the cohort sizes or for the high school age students, how are we getting a true number of how many are willing to come back so that we're planning accurately based on that information?
Yeah, so what we learned earlier in the fall was when we asked parents if they were going to bring their kids back, we got about 2/3 of them saying yes, and then a sizable amount saying, well, we're not sure, what are you offering? And so we really need to come up with a model so we know what we're asking them to participate in. I think this first next step would be us looking at room capacity. So if, for example, we can only get 10 in a room in a given school, then we need to realize that even if we had class sizes of 35, we're not going to be, even if we had a percentage of them not coming, we probably need 2 or 3 days to get kids in. So what we're working on is under a bunch of assumptions as we kind of plan the model. And then what we'll need to do is reach out to our community after we have an initial ask. We have obviously asked kids and families along the way, just anecdotally. And I think we'll probably, just like we're seeing in other districts, we'll probably get more high school students that are willing to come. So we're kind of estimating like a low 75% and probably even higher. So that's kind of our low benchmark, which is about what we're hearing for primary grades, but we think high school will probably even be higher.
Thank you, Dale. Martin, did I see your hand raised or? Okay. Any other questions? Is that all we have on this topic, Mike?
Yes, it is.
All right. Our next item on our agenda is discussion time. So let's start with our student reps and see if there's any, if you have any thing you want to talk about. This is your time, and feel free to pass if you don't.
Hi everybody. I just wanted to say how cool the video was that was just shown about going back to possibly school. I think that's super cool. And I also really liked the idea of the kids that are online. The kids that are online learning being shown up on the board in front so they can be included as well. I think that's a really awesome idea. So.
All right. Since it sounds like Ilham is passing, I guess it's my turn now. All right. Hi everybody. How do I start this off? I don't really have. I have a couple of things that I would like to mention. First thing is I would like to reiterate my point that I made last week. I still am not entirely sure how I feel about high school students being towards high school students going back last. As I mentioned before, high school students have a lot on the line. In general, it's all been I don't know. I just really don't. I still don't really know how I feel about that. Admittedly, when there's and I know that last time I was talking about how sometimes people can use this as an opportunity to kind of avoid doing classwork, but as far as kids that actually generally want to learn more, it's been really stressful, especially if you're taking, again, AP classes, just for reasons other than I have mentioned. When there's it's a lot of work for the teachers, but it's a lot of work for the students too. Generally, when we were forecasting last year and we were picking which classes we wanted to do, this was not what we were expecting. And personally, I was, when I decided, hey, I want to take multiple AP classes, I did not expect this to be how I would do it. And I mean, I can just imagine that there are a lot of other students out there that are in the same boat, but they're for, again, just really technical classes. Like there's only so much that you can learn. Like there's only so much that, there's only so much that you can do. Because again, culinary, I mentioned that you can't do that very well online. But anyway, the whole thing that I did want to advocate for is that if there's an opportunity, maybe expanding limited in-person instruction to more technical classes that generally require in-person instruction, because classes like English, frankly, you can take that online relatively easily. But classes like let me think, math or sciences that have labs, there's only so much learning that can really go on in that sort of an environment. And I understand that there are, the cohort 100 students can be in contact with each other, I think, is one of the limiting factors. But I feel like that could help with that if it's not everybody. I think there's something else I wanted to say about this, but actually, yeah, there was a few things. So when I was, some of you guys know I did HOA for a while, and when I started doing it, one of the first things that they told me was that online learning is not, it's not an excuse to slack off, basically, because there's a decent amount of people who think that, oh, it's online, I'll just do it all at the end of the year or something like that. And well, it's hard. You have to work harder if you want to learn the same amount. And I feel like that's just something that I would like people to recognize. Other than that, I believe they mentioned, or it was for the, I'm kind of changing subjects, but well, I am changing subjects, but for the selection of the next student board reps, I would absolutely love to get the chance to answer questions and talk with future board reps. Any way that I could help in the selection process just by answering questions, I would absolutely love to. Other than that, I don't have anything else I would like to say. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Devlin, and thank you for providing feedback. And I know that our staff is listening and knows a lot about the needs that our seniors and other high school students are having. And I think that's a great suggestion, that there's a way of thinking outside the box and looking at ways that some classes maybe can stay on CDL and use that space differently. I think that's a great suggestion. Next, we have our superintendent time. Do you have any discussion items, Mike?
I do not. We presented everything that we wanted to update you on, so I think we are in good shape here. The only thing maybe that I would add is that we continue to have good conversations with both of our associations, and we feel like we will be in a spot where we're going to be able to open on time and to get the kids back. So really, that's all I had.
Thanks, Mike. Now we'll go to director's time, and looking at my screen here, we'll go down my list. And we'll start with Jackie, and then Lisa, you're on deck.
Thank you. Devlin, you made some really good points about that I hadn't considered about, and I'm sure that Dale and administration are listening, about some classes are easier to manage online than not. It's a really good point, culinary, some of the more technical classes. So I'm sure that they will take that, and I encourage them to take that and as a one of the factors of deciding which courses go back in person. I think that was a really good point. I appreciate you bringing that up. I do like, and I'm hoping that we, as at our board, for our board meetings, can also incorporate video and in-person options like they're doing in the classroom. I don't know if everybody knew that, at the last meeting there were about over 200 people on watching the live stream. And to me, I mean, gosh, we're always lucky if we have, 2 or 5 people at meetings, unless it's an issue that the community is very passionate about. So I think it's a great opportunity to include more of our community members. It's a lot easier for them to attend, not having to drive, and they can do it from home. So I hope that we will look at how we can manage that and make that happen when we return to in-person meetings. I think it will probably look more hybrid. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Lisa?
Right. I don't have a lot to say this evening. I'm excited that the timeline is continuing as we hoped that it would, and I'm really crossing my fingers for the bottleneck to unbottle or whatever. So that will be great. I like Jackie's idea about the idea of live streaming, perhaps once we are able to return safely in person to our board meetings. That's a great idea, Jackie. That's, I guess, all that I will say right now. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Lisa. Mark, and then Martin, you're on deck.
Yeah, expanding on what Jackie said too, the sort of virtualization of our world, I think, will continue when we're all back in person, everyone's vaccinated, and we've defeated the virus. So, I mean, already thinking about how to incorporate those things into our new world order, I think, is a great plan. And I like the idea of, it may be complicated, but figuring out a way to do audience time with people actually speaking. I've been watching a lot of public hearings at the Capitol lately, and they've found a way to have people sign up with an online link to provide testimony in person. So while Beth, you're doing a great job reading everybody's comments, I would really love to be able to figure out a way for the technology to allow people to do audience time in person, be in one of our little boxes and have everybody see them. So I know it's possible. Don't know if it's possible on our platform or how difficult it would be for us. And when students are back in classrooms, I'd love to figure out a way to do a hybrid board meeting. I'd probably come if we knew that we were going to be spaced out far enough in a giant room. Maybe it's not the boardroom, maybe it's gymnasium at the high school or something. I don't, but given the opportunity to be back in person, I think I would do that too. And, you know, with that in mind, to Devlin's point, you know, we have pretty, it's pretty broad how we define who needs LIPI. So, you know, getting AP assistance might not be a bad way to go. And really, with the cohort size problem in high school, I think even if it has to be one day, even one day is beneficial. Getting students back, even if it has to just be one day a week to keep the numbers safe, that one day seems like it would be worth it to me. Our numbers are fantastic in Washington County, great in Oregon. Over the past 12 days, we're the fourth lowest cases in the country, fourth lowest death rate in the country. So I mean, we're really doing a great job here in Oregon. I think when the governor made the call to say, look, we got to get this under control to get students back in classrooms, Oregonians took it to heart, and we need to get some students back in classrooms on a regular basis. And I appreciate that we're all working towards that. And as our numbers come down, it's great. It's a thing we should be celebrating, but you know, also realize this puts us about where we were at November 1st. I wouldn't say anybody thought that we were doing a great job November 1st. So as long as we keep heading that way, I'm very encouraged. So yeah, thanks y'all.
Thanks, Mark. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I'll mention is the upcoming Hillsboro Schools Foundation Gala. It's going to be online and just every bit as important as it ever has been. And in the following year, it'll be every bit as impactful as HSF always is with the money they raise. So I encourage everybody, hsfonline.org, and please support the good work they do. Thank you.
And it's free to register online for the auction. So you don't have, you can do the auction part without buying a ticket, so.
If I could, Eric, if I can just chime in 1 second, that event is February 19th from 6:30 to 8. And just as a reminder, Hillsboro Schools Foundation has been an incredible partner for us for years and years. Millions of dollars donated to the district, and that has had a direct impact on students, whether it's programs or grants or expanding a curriculum or bringing back CTE opportunities for kids. Over and over again, they've showed up and just been a huge player for us. And since the pandemic began, they have really altered their way of doing business and pivoted to providing as much direct assistance to families as absolutely possible. So a huge partner for us. Encourage you all to attend. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Martin. Next, we have Shan and then Yadira.
I have nothing to add tonight, so I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Shan. Yadira?
Yeah, I have nothing much more to add. I'm just also excited about the timeline having March 29th. I actually haven't told my first grader just because she's going to make me mark it on the calendar, and then she's going to start checking off dates and stuff and waiting for that day to come. So I'm going to tell her as we get closer when it's like things are for sure. So.
Thanks, Yadira. We do have our upcoming board retreat that we have done a half day to plan a little bit for our board, do some work. I wanted to just put it out there for you all that I was looking and might have a slight schedule conflict maybe. And I know another board member might as well. So I'm hoping that there might be some flexibility in either moving the date or pushing the time a little bit. Things seem to move a lot quicker also in this kind of video environment that we're in. There's less transition when we're doing this than in person. So I'm going to have Rose just send out a doodle poll for all of us to look and see if there's a better time and time frame that fits. And if not, we'll just keep what we're doing. But I just wanted to check and let you all know that I'm going to have Rose work on that. And if you could respond, that would be great. I don't have any additional things. Thank you so much, everyone, for all the work that you continue to do to try to get us back in person and our students in the building, from delivering meals to figuring out the days that we're in and all the planning that happens. So I'm just really appreciative of all the work of staff, administration, and Mike, your leadership during this time. So I just want to thank you again for just your continued effort and work and doing this and centering around our kids and their social and emotional needs, as well as their educational needs. So thank you to all the staff for the amazing work that you're doing. And with that, this work session is adjourned.